Welcome to Financial Clarity, the podcast dedicated to helping service-based small business owners achieve financial success. Join us as we demystify financial concepts, get practical tips from seasoned entrepreneurs, and discover strategies to increase profit and value. Hannah Smolinski here. I'm the host of the Financial Clarity podcast, where I chat with successful entrepreneurs, financial experts, and leaders in the small business community. A quick heads up to the audience. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about EOS, or the Entrepreneur Operating System. And if you hear those letters, I don't want anybody to be confused. So if you don't know what that is and you want to learn a little bit more about EOS, you can go back to my episode with Zach Kramer, who is an EOS implementer, and get familiar with the basics of EOS. And we will be sure to link that in the show notes. Today's episode is brought to you by Clara CFO Group. Clara CFO is a fractional CFO agency dedicated to supporting B2B service companies. If you're looking to uplevel the financial strategy and leadership in your business, visit claracfo.com to learn more. I got connected with today's guest after a LinkedIn post that I made about professional service companies that do not track time. I was curious, and somebody had actually tagged Ben Wolf, and we later connected and talked about the subject. And after that discussion, I thought, hey, he would be a very interesting guest to have on the podcast. So he's here with us today. Ben founded Wolf's Edge Integrators after solving for himself a problem that a lot of business owners have. He was stuck in the weeds of a business he'd launched and didn't have $250,000 to hire a full-time, top-notch COO. That's when he discovered the benefits of fractional leadership. Today, fractional COOs from Wolf's Edge help business owners all over America create self-driving businesses and live life out of the weeds. Ben also wrote the first book explaining what fractional executive leadership is, how it works, and how to take advantage of the model. And we will be sure to put a link to that book in the show notes so you can check it out. Ben, thank you for being here with me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Hannah.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you because we have lots of crossover with you being in fractional COO work and integrator work, and then we're in fractional CFO. So I feel like our worlds are definitely overlapping. But I would like first for you to tell the audience and me what kind of business you were first running that kind of made you realize that you needed a fractional leader, and specifically that it was this like COO.
Well, I was in a healthcare business. It was a startup. When I first joined, I was the first full-time employee. I was joining the founder. I was the first full-time employee. And it was an organization called Freedom Care based out of New York, which is now national. And I just learned the entrepreneurial world in that business. I had a very much more corporate background before that. I was actually an attorney and doing corporate bankruptcy law, and just learned everything from doing it, right? Just in scaling a business almost from the ground up. And that business got to about 130 people and about over 100 million gross annual revenue by the time I left. So I really just got to get a picture of, what things are like in a 5-person organization and a 10, a 50, 100-person plus organization, and learn what all those different things look like, what they need to be like. Made a lot of mistakes and just, tried to learn from the experience. I heard about the fractional, like doing that integrator role fractionally. I'd heard about it, but I was afraid of like doing it like on my own. I first went to another full-time COO role at another healthcare company. And then when I didn't see that was like a good path, I put in a resignation and hung up my own shingle, right? As this path. And then, it was about maybe 2 years after that when I did this as a solo practitioner, fractional COO, fractional integrator, fractional number 2 leader, whatever terminology you want to use. Started doing it on my own. Eventually started bringing other people into the firm. But during that time, I just also saw that, I was like, oh, but someone should write a book about this. I was like, oh, well, there's probably like 10 books on this subject, because I knew all these fractional people out there. There's got to be like 10 books on this already. And I just Googled it and searched and looked on Amazon, every possible search term I could think of, and there was none. Nobody had done it.
Wow.
People had blog articles, and once in a while you'd have a mainstream media article about it, but that was about it. Like all self-promotion activities and content, but that was it. So I was like, okay, well, like there needs to be a book. Like this is a major model that like fills a huge gap in the talent space. People need experienced talent on the executive level, but they can't necessarily afford the $250,000-$300,000 it costs to hire someone like that full time. Well, again, you were just like stuck trying to figure it out for yourself, or maybe with a consultant or asking your accountant various questions and trying to figure it out yourself. It just was not a great solution. So I
Mhm.
just wrote the book to try to solve for that.
Nice. That's so when you were working at the healthcare company, you were acting in that COO role. Is that like you
Yeah,
kind of
I
had to
was
be?
yeah, I was over every like there was like no part of the business that I didn't touch
Yeah.
in some way or another. I still had even a department role that I was still in as well. On top of all that, I was also GC, general counsel, because from the attorney background. So
True entrepreneur wearing all the hats.
yeah, right. I joke that like when I did leave the company that they had to replace me with five people,
Yeah,
not full time necessarily, but there was just
right.
I was in so many different parts of the business. There are about five people that replaced different parts of what I did. Some parts were just not replaced, and actually ended up doing about 2 years of consulting with them afterwards, so stuff that they couldn't even replace. But
Right.
it was like an interesting experience. Yeah, like getting in at the ground level of such a dynamic, like fast growing entrepreneurial company like that.
Yeah. And then seeing such rapid growth, I'm sure that the needs operationally changed dramatically from year to year with that type of growth. Can you explain to us the difference between a COO and just somebody who's in charge of operations? Like what's that? Because I the term COO is used a lot and in very small organizations that maybe there's five people. Like my company is very small and we have a quote unquote COO, but like, that's just a term that we use because she's the highest the highest in our company besides me. She's the number two and now a co-owner as well. But um, you know, director of operations is the term, hiring an operations manager. There's all these different kind of operations titles. And obviously, there's smaller organizations will use different titling, but can you kind of walk us through maybe what these roles really are and how they're different?
Sure. To exacerbate your question, as I think you alluded to, there are people do not use those terms, some of these terms consistently, and some
Hmm.
people will mean one thing when they use the term, as we spoke about before we started recording.
Hmm.
Other people will use the same term a different way. Some people when I say operations, let's say the operations seat of a business, I'm referring to one seat among several reporting to either the CEO or the number two leader of the business, whatever you call that number two leader. So either the number two leader of the business or the CEO, they'll have a quote unquote leadership team reporting to them. Each one is over a different major function of the business. There could be 3 to 5, 3 to 7 seats, like, in that sub number two leader level. And operations, as I use the term, is one of those functions of the business that you'll have a head of operations over it. Now, some people will call that operations. Some people will call that COO. Some
Hmm.
people, people use different types of terminology. Maybe they use operations manager, different titles, or operations manager might be title used at a mid-level manager, sub that head of operations. So
Hmm.
it's a confusing element to it. Obviously, the different people use the terms differently. I'll try to use the term number two leader when I refer to what I'm calling a COO. Like when I think of a COO, I'm thinking of the one who runs the business. The entire leadership team reports to the COO.
Hmm.
That's how I use the term, but a lot of people don't use it that way. So to make it less confusing, I'll say number two leader when I'm talking about the number two leader.
Hmm.
We might also use the term integrator, which is another term that's sometimes used to refer to the number two leader of a business, the
Hmm.
one responsible for driving execution of the business, for the owner or CEO, whatever that person's title might be.
And that integrator term is specific to EOS, correct? Like, or do people outside of
People,
EOS
I
really
mean, some people
use?
outside do use it, but yeah, I would think that most people will have initially heard of it from an EOS
Mhm.
context.
Is there much of a difference between a COO and an integrator? I mean, really, if
Well,
we
again, if you're
look at,
using COO to mean the one who's the number two leader of the business, then no,
yeah.
it should be the same thing.
Hmm.
Um, the word integrator is meant to capture the idea that they're integrating all the different functions of the business into one cohesive whole, into one cohesive execution. I think that's why that's why that's the appeal, I think, of the term integrator, is that, it's not just a title for our job. It actually describes what you do in the job, right? Which
Hmm.
is integrating all the functions of the business, ensuring that marketing works with sales, that works with operations, that works with finance in a cohesive way. And there's clean handoffs, and people are not working on cross priorities and things like that.
Hmm. Um, this is gonna maybe sound like a stupid question, but I'm here to ask the stupid
One
question.
stupid
So for the
question is the one
people
that you do
for
not ask.
for the people that are listening that are like, wait a second, I just want to get a little bit more clear on this. So I've heard the term operations be used in two different ways. Some organizations talk about operations in that it's everything, the admin, the
Back office.
finance, the yeah,
Yeah.
everything back office. And then I've heard operations be like, no, what is whatever the like revenue generating engine
Right. The product or
services.
service that we provide to our clients or customers.
Yes, that's operations. So which is it? Or like are both?
Look, I
Is
mean,
it all?
it doesn't even, honestly, it doesn't matter as long as whoever's listening to this, as long as you use whatever term you use in a consistent way within your business. And it's not that, the COO uses the term one way, uses operations one way, and your CFO uses the operations term another way, and the CMO uses it a third way. As long as you're not sending mixed messages and confusing your people, which is very demoralizing. As long
Mm,
as within your business you're consistent, it really doesn't matter. I don't think there's anybody that has a monopoly on truth of how terminology should be used. Um, I I have rarely I probably have heard operations used the way you just alluded to mean kind of backstage or behind the curtain internal operations. I probably have heard it used that way, but not much. I mean, that's at least I've had very rare experiences where I've ever heard anyone use the term that way. I mean, for whatever
mhm.
that's worth. Um, usually, uh, usually I have heard that role described, titled as either office manager or
Mhm.
in one business. One business I'm currently involved in, they call it admin or administration. So that's just kind of that's covering HR and IT and and physical plant and maintenance
Yeah,
and just kind of the offices, all these kinds of things, keeping the coffee stocked, whatever, like just
right.
all of that. And I've heard that called admin. um Rarely have I heard it called operations, but look, as long as a particular business owner uses the terms and everybody within that business uses it in a consistent way, like, I don't think there's any correct
Yeah.
correct way.
Well, yeah, super important because if you're hiring for one thing and
Mm.
you want to be really clear on what that role is, and that if you're looking for someone with operations experience and they
Yeah,
think they're going to
what
be
kind of
doing an
operations?
admin role, like,
Right.
that everybody's, yeah, very clear on exactly what that is. So that makes sense because I actually have seen that where there was a mismatch of
Mm.
what the person should have been doing and really what they spent all their time doing. So it was kind of a little bit of a mess, but
Yeah.
we can move on from that. I see on your website a lot, and even in the intro that we were talking about, this concept of a self-driving business. What is a self-driving business to you?
Well, that's meant to be to the exclusion of an owner dependent business where nothing really happens, nothing really goes forward, or even the day to day, even worse, if the day to day operations can't go forward without the constant involvement of the owner.
Yeah.
So that's really what it's meant to be, is that you have the right people in the either the number two leader seat or the other members of the management team or leadership team, that you have people in place who fully own their functions of the business. So they're able to fully own and drive forward at the bare minimum the day-to-day operation, day-to-day running of the business, and ideally, what they must have is the ability to independently, with full internal ownership, drive forward the things that move the ball forward in the business as well. Not just to keep the day to day running, but also there's, you know, basically 100% of us have one way that our business runs now and another better way that we want it to be in the future, whether that's in size, scale, or, you know, greater effectiveness or whatnot. And so you want a leadership team in place, each of whom, again, is over one of the major functions of the business, who can independently drive their function of the business and independently drive, you know, 1 to 3 to 4, you know, priorities that are going to make tomorrow look better than today. Right? Things that are not part of the day-to-day operations, but they're not so underwater and keeping the day-to-day running that they have ability to work on major projects that are going to make things better tomorrow than they are today, that move the ball forward. And so that brings us to the point where I lost my train of thought and forgot what the question was.
We were talking about self-driving business.
Oh, it's self-driving business, right?
Yeah.
So you have a leadership team in place who is fully owning their functions of the business and fully owning the things that move the ball forward as it relates to their function of the business. And usually you really need, if it's not going to be owner dependent, you really also need, at least at some point, you're going to need that number two leader, right? Somebody who can really drive execution on, again, not only the running of the day-to-day of whatever product or service your business does and marketing and sales and finance, but also driving the ball forward, that, you know, of whatever the strategic vision of the business is, and they're driving that too.
Mm-hmm.
That's the, you know, when you've got a leadership team in place who does that, and a number two leader who's able to do that, then you have a self-managing business. Then the owner is able to say, whoa, okay, now I have no job in the business. I don't have a day job in the business, at least. And that's where, like, massive growth, massive improvement can start to happen. Because when the owner doesn't have a day job in the business, they're not necessary for the basic running of the business, then they're able to do stuff. They're able to focus most of their energy on the, number one, more fun stuff, and number two, the stuff that really moves the ball forward that nobody else could do. Like the big relationships, the big deals, the big innovations in their product or service, the trade shows, the PR, being a thought leader, whatever it is. I mean, every particular owner is going to have a different thing that they love doing and are great at. But that's when you have real magic and what EOS calls rocket fuel, right? When you can have the day-to-day and the strategic initiatives of the business are running largely without owner involvement, and the owner can be doing things that is just massively growing the business way more than they could if it was just if it was just the leadership team without the owner. It's going to grow, it's going to go, but it's going to be rocket fuel. It's going to be massive growth with the owner freed up to do the things that they're born to do.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people are listening and thinking, like, yes, how do I get there? I just want to get to that point where I can do the stuff that I really want to be doing, like, you know, maintaining those relationships, spending, I think, like, even just having white space that most entrepreneurs don't get because they're so kind of bogged down in the day to day and doing everything, keeping all the balls in the air all the time, you know, having a little space to, like, have some creative energy to even think, like, what is next for the business, or what could I be doing? Who should I be talking to? You know, a lot of us just get too bogged down. We can't even think about those things. So, so that sounds really great. Self-driving business sounds wonderful. We're working towards that for sure. One thing that I talked about with Zach Kramer, when they were on the show, was that this integrator role is something that, you know, it's operations. It should be, you know, somewhat of a day-to-day type thing. So how does a, you know, someone who should be in charge or helping the day-to-day, how does that work with fractional? Because I think some people might just think, like, it's not possible to maybe have somebody help with operations at a fractional level. So could you explain that a little bit more and how you guys might work with that?
Sure, absolutely. And I think that gets to something that we already talked about before, which is this very common conflation between operations and running the business. Those are two
Mm,
separate things, right?
mm,
Operations is one of several major functions of the business that is or should be run by somebody under the number two leader or under the owner if there is no number two leader. And that is the, operations, as I use the term, is the is the actual delivery of the product or service that my business provides to clients or customers. Like that's the actual thing of how your business makes money, right?
yeah.
Is like as I use the term is operations, right? So key department. And that is separate and different from the concept of a number two leader who is not the one who runs that department. I mean, they might be, you might have one person sit in both seats, but they're doing that because they're wearing two hats, not because that's inherently part of being the integrator or number two leader.
Hmm.
So that's the first distinction I would make
Mm,
is that typically you do want that operations head, that one of several department leaders or functional leaders within the business, you do want that to be full time.
hmm.
And I would agree with that. I do know some who've done it on a fractional basis, but usually it's not the kind of fractional we do. It's like 2, 3, 4 days a week. I mean it's
Yeah.
or 16, 20 hours a week. And so somebody's in the business 4 or 5 hours a day. Maybe they have two clients like that, or maybe one
Hmm.
that's like a little smaller and one that's like that. But usually that's not done fractionally. Usually
Yeah.
that is done on a full-time basis. So when I say that we do the role, like in my firm, Wolf's Edge Integrators, what we do with the integrator role fractionally is not that operations role. That's a separate
Hmm.
role. They report to us and we're involved with them. But it's not, it's not the day-to-day, make sure, this, widget A gets delivered to Bob and widget B
Yeah.
gets delivered to Jim, like that's not the involvement or whatever widget is. I mean, if it's a service business, like your listeners and viewers, obviously it's a whatever deliverable A, deliverable B, not widget A, widget B. And it's definitely a great question though of how can the integrator or number two leader role be done fractionally. So I think before you can even answer that question, you've got to ask why would you even want to do a fraction? Like what would like why would you even want to do that? What brings you to that? And I think that it's really the same use case of why people bring in a fractional CFO like your firm,
Hmm.
right? It's essentially the same use case just for a different function of the business, which is that where you need someone of higher caliber and higher experience who's led this function at before, that's in our case of COO or integrator, who's ran businesses before, who's scaled businesses before that are bigger than mine, and they've done that before, and they could they know what to do. We don't have to continue what we have been doing for the last few years, which is, well, this thing sounds like it might work, or I read in that book that this thing might work, and we're just
Mm,
trying different things, and there's just like a lot of experimentation, and it's a very circuitous route to success because there's just a lot of being a guinea pig on ourselves and experimenting with one thing and something else, and every 2 or 3 quarters trying something new, and eventually some of the things work, and it's just a very long process. And if your business is in a place where what it needs is, I need someone that's scaled and run businesses bigger than mine before.
hmm.
But the problem is, and this is again where this, same as you with the CFO, the problem is that if I need someone like that, but I can't afford the $200,000 or $300,000 it costs to get a person like that.
Hmm.
So what am I going to do? I'm just going to guinea pig it out for another 4 or 5 years. Well, like it just like depends. Maybe I'm already older. Maybe I just don't want to wait that long. I want to do more faster. So you're just stuck without the concept of fractional, right? Which is just saying, hey, get someone, and we do this. A lot of CFOs, maybe you guys are like this, do it for a longer. You might be with a client for 5 years or something.
Mm,
But most of our clients, we're not like that.
hmm.
We're only in this COO or integrator role for typically 9 to 18 months, and we're just saying, okay, you're going to bring somebody in, bring some big guns in, not like from big corporate with 10,000 people, but like at a business that who's ran businesses and like mine, understands mine, but have been further along than where I've been, and bring them in fractionally. So you don't have to pay the hefty cost of what it would cost, like of what it would cost to hire someone like that. And the truth is that strategic of a level of work, you don't need them 40 hours a week for that anyway.
Yeah.
So you're going to probably end up giving them two or three hats. And so they're only going to be fulfilling that higher level role, you know, 20, 30% of their time. And the rest of the time, they're going to be doing operations or something else or projects or something like that. And now you're just kind of overpaying full time for someone to do the role fractionally.
Yeah.
So here, just the fractional role in the COO or integrator, number two leader side, we're just saying, okay, like everybody, I'm only bringing people into my particular, at least my firm, who've ran and scaled businesses before, right? Who can do this for many years. They've got the experience. They know what to do. It's not an experiment. It's not a guinea pig. And so yeah, bring them in 9 to 18 months after we, either up level or maybe change out certain members of the leadership team or up level them, make a certain other major projects and changes over the business that maybe we've been trying for a long time, and and then we either work to elevate someone from within the leadership team or below if there is a good candidate for that integrator role, and if not, and we're being honest with ourselves, then we help them bring somebody in from the outside. And either way, we're intimately involved in that process to ensure that we transition to the right person and they can continue off into the sunset, maintaining momentum as much as possible. But it's not really a full-time role at that
Yeah.
level,
That makes
right? But we're
sense.
supporting the leadership team, all the leadership team members, leading the
Mm.
leadership team, and of keeping our fingers in like all the pies in the business and like what's going on, working, collaborating closely with the owner to stay on the same page, constantly uploading and downloading information, getting whatever decisions we need to, effectively working with everybody else, be effective in that, and quick and fast. And then after 9 to 18 months, or it could be more or less, like we do transition to somebody who's in the business full time.
Mm.
Sometimes they're full time in that role of integrator number two leader because we've grown the business enough that makes sense. Um, or sometimes it's somebody who is sitting in two
Yeah.
seats.
I think that makes it, I mean, it is very, very relatable to the fractional CFO side as well. Um, I think that concept of you don't need full-time strategy is like something that I've said to people multiple times because like, you might need somebody in the accounting side, you might need somebody every day, you know, processing invoices and paying bills and, you know, doing your transactions, like that very task oriented, everyday type thing, gathering receipts, putting them into your accounting system. That person who has that skill set is often not the same person who can give you the advice to think about, bigger picture and think about strategy. And if they are, you don't want them spending all that time categorizing your QuickBooks. So,
Right.
if somebody was trying to hire me to be their like all-in-one accounting resource, it would be way too expensive. $300,000 a year or something would not make sense for me to be in charge of somebody's QuickBooks. So I think that that's probably really similar in that operations where an organization could think they're hiring somebody like a COO and they want them to do everything from like the admin assistant role stuff all the way up to big picture strategy. It's just not realistic and it's not financially it's not financially efficient either.
Yeah. Not a
Um,
smart use of resources.
yeah. So I like that a lot and that makes a lot more sense to have like maybe an on-site op, person, operations manager or something like that, reporting up to, potentially up to that number two seat that you are talking about. Um, how do you guys, let's see, like, are you seeing more? I guess like over the past, like and in the fractional CFO side, I've seen this. Like when I first started in 2017, I felt like I had to explain what fractional leadership was or fractional CFO was to pretty much anybody who I talked to. And now I say it and most people are like, okay, I kind of get it. Are you seeing it come more into like the mainstream, needing less explaining than it did a while ago?
Yeah. I was actually just talking with my leadership team earlier in the week about this, that when I started on the fractional integrator or number two leader side, like when I started doing this back in 2019, um, there was a little over, like if you searched on all of LinkedIn and quotation marks the term fractional integrator, there were a little over 80 people with that phrase anywhere in their LinkedIn profile. And all of the millions of people on LinkedIn, there were about 80.
Mm.
Um, now there now 2024 or 2025, excuse me, there are uh to I think around 350. So it's gotten to be a lot more. Obviously, there's other terms that people use like fractional COO and everything. I'll
Yeah.
give you another indicator is that there's a whole bunch of peer-to-peer networking groups that have cropped up for all kinds of fractional executives, and one of them is called Fractionals United, which you could find out about if you're in that space at fractionalsunited.com. I think they also have a referral service that they
Hmm.
can that they can do for if you're a business owner. Check out fractionalsunited.com. But I mean, they started off, I don't know, 2 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago, founded by Karina Mickley, out of New York. Although it's international, like people,
Hmm.
Australia, New Zealand, Europe, America, Africa, South America, and I think now there's about 9,000 like members on their Slack group on the
Yeah.
fractional executive world. That could be out of date. Maybe it's 10,000 now, but
Yeah.
let's say around 9, 10,000 people in there who are at least identifying as fractional executives of one
Yeah.
kind or another. So definitely is gotten out there. Look, that's why I wrote the book, Fractional
Yeah.
Leadership, Landing Executive Talent You Thought Was Out of Reach, because it is so little known, right? We need it's actually meant to also be a resource for any fractional out there. It's like, hey, someone doesn't understand what this is, just give them this book. Like it's just
Yeah.
something that can do all the explaining for you so you can focus on what you do, right? Instead of just explaining the basic concept. So they're like at least partially sold on it and have some of their questions answered about the basic model before you start talking to people. But definitely I've seen a lot of growth as well.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I want to shift a little bit into talking more about Wolf's Edge and how you've built the business. And I'm curious, like, do you guys charge, like, are you on retainer model? Do you do hourly? Like, what kind of is the revenue model you've chosen to go
Sure.
with?
Sure. Your listeners and viewers are B2B service companies.
Hmm.
You run a B2B service company. I run a B2B service company. So I think that some of the stuff that you and I do is also very relevant to our clients as well.
Hmm.
That those who might be listening to and watching. Um, the We do a retainer model, so we don't we internally track hours. Like and the truth is, we're not yet doing it in a way that like I could see the hours everybody's doing, but we have a spreadsheet that we give to everybody for all their clients. So we do track hours, but that's not like nothing's reported officially to the client. Our billing is not based on that. Um, it's our billing is based on an understanding that we do a presentation that we give all of our clients or prospects that lays out, hey, here's what our role, like we're fulfilling a role in the business, right? This is
Hmm.
different from like it's not a deliverable in the sense that like it's more akin to actually hiring your COO. That's really what it is, right? We're inside, like you as a CFO, we're inside the organizational chart. We're inside the
Hmm.
org chart. We're inside the accountability chart, whatever they call that chart of the business, fulfilling a role, right? That seat between the owner, whatever
Hmm.
they call whatever that owner calls his or her seat, and the members of the leadership team, right? We're sitting in that role in between. And so we charge a monthly retainer. We lay out what the accountabilities are in that. We, share a description of like the typical activities in a typical week, or on a quarterly basis that happen and that that we're involved in. And of course, there's always ad hoc and things and emergencies that come up. But that's how we sell it. We don't give hourly
Yeah.
bills. Where there's no hourly accounting in that sense. We do track it internally, and that's more so for our own planning and our own ability to communicate with our clients, so that if I know we're like averaging an hour, or if we're averaging 8 hours a week with a client, or about a day a week with a client, then and then we've got let's say 2 days one week, because of a quarterly planning session and like the regular work of the week. And then I've got my vacation coming up with my family at the end of the month. So we like
Hmm.
communicate, hey, we kind of like front loaded all this time, and I'm gonna be out that week. And so whatever, it just allows us to have that conversation because we're not just guessing and we're
Yeah.
actually tracking that internally, but that's more internal.
Hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, I'm a big fan of not charging for hours wherever possible.
Yeah, I mean, look, I came from a lawyer. I was a law firm. I
Yeah,
tracked every 6 minutes of my
yeah,
time,
yeah,
and so I know what that's like. I did it for 5 years, and the challenge is I don't want I don't want my clients thinking twice before they call me or email me because they
exactly.
know there's going to be
Yeah,
another bill. Like our role is
yeah,
too key in the organization. I can't afford that. I don't want to be blindsided by something because somebody made a decision 3 weeks ago because they didn't want to call me.
yeah. I think even more so, the higher, the more strategic you are, and the higher you up in the higher you up, wait, higher you are up. I can't get my words right. Up into the organization, it makes more sense to not have. Yeah, you don't want to be
It cheapens
penalized
it
for.
cheapens my time. Cheapens
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So, I'm curious about how you're able to find people as you've been growing this agency and finding people who are experienced and do have this level. I find in the fractional space that a lot of people either just want to go out on their own, have their just put a single shingle out and just for them, and they just want to take find their own clients and do that, or that if they do want to work for a company, salary requests can be very high and, fairly demanding, expecting lots of things. So I'm curious how you're finding people and some of your thoughts around compensation.
Yeah, there's about 10 questions there, but I love this topic. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a really great topic. In terms of finding people, I've been personally blessed that with the book and with whatever speaking and and relationships and everything that I've done is that especially in the EOS ecosystem, somewhat outside of that, but mostly in the EOS ecosystem, like all that whole world, I'm relatively well known.
Mm.
And so anybody who's like in this space, like anybody who is is an integrator or is thinking of going fractional or whatever, they're just like kind of in this space, they probably will have heard of me,
Mm.
thankfully.
Yeah.
So I've just always had lots of people reaching out and connecting or receiving introductions. And so I've been very blessed in that respect. I know that there's big, big, big things that I want to do over time. And I know that that's not like an eternally sustainable model. So we're mindful of the fact that we're going, one of our evolutions is going to need to, doesn't yet have to be, but is going to need to be um, the kind of a marketing and sales engine for recruitment,
Mm-hmm.
and that's definitely in our future, but it is not necessary right now. We've got currently nine COOs on the team, nine integrators on the team, interviewing for a 10th. Actually, just got a spot. We just decided
Nice.
last week, we made the decision to open up that 10th spot. And so we've got like no shortage of applicants, right? We got like
Yeah.
plenty of people in the system. I'm going to be, kind of interviewing probably close to 10 people for
Mm.
this round of hiring. Um, so that's one question you asked, right? So that's now,
Mm-hmm.
but again, mindful of the fact that in the future, it's not going to be that way. Um, you have some very interesting questions though about what kind of thing people are looking for. So, uh, any not sure where to start here. They're like one challenge baked into the fabric of reality for any executive who wants to do fractional. And this doesn't not just for integrator or number two leader, but obviously applies to CFO. It applies to any kind of solo consultant or EOS implementer or Vistage chair, right? Any kind of business like that where someone's a solo business. The inherent challenge, the inherent unfairness baked into the fabric of reality is that is that the is that there's not a lot of crossover between those who get one and have the capacity to do really well the substantive business, right? The executing of the COO role, the executing of the CFO role, the executing of the Vistage chair coaching and facilitation, the execution of the day session coaching that an EOS implementer does, any of those types of things. The 80% of the people who would be really good at that are are not people who get one and have the capacity to excel really well at the business development part.
Yeah.
Um, and so you gotta decide what to do. Like when I started this practice as a solo practitioner at the beginning, I was told by somebody. Actually, I'll just say his name. Call out Ben Berman, like expert EOS implementer, based out of well, now he's based out of Florida. And he told me, like, one of the bullet points in your job description is and will always be business development if you decide to launch a practice like this. Like, he told me this
Yeah.
before I started. And if you don't GWC, if you don't get one of the capacity to excel on a consistent basis for the rest of your career, in not just at the beginning till you get started and you'll rely on
Mhm.
referrals, doesn't work that way. If you're not willing to do this for the rest of your career and excel at that the rest of your career, then don't go into it.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the bullet points in your job description as a solo practitioner of any kind. That's one of the bullet points in your description. And if you can't excel at that, you could be as great as you could be in the actual service delivery. You're not going to be successful because maybe you could do some big push at the beginning of your launch and
Yeah.
call everybody you know and spend 3 months doing that. You probably have enough relationships that maybe you could even fill up the first time that way. But 4, 6, 9 months down the road, a few of those are going to roll off, and you haven't been doing any business development because you've been raking in the bucks all that time. Like, when you were full, you've been raking in the bucks. Like you said, you're making 100%,
Yeah.
almost 100%, almost no expenses, and you're making lots of money. You're super busy. You want to do a good job for your clients. Then some of those clients roll off. Now you find yourself with 20, 30% utilization
Hmm.
and can't afford, the mortgage or whatever is going
Yeah.
on in life. And, you get back into BD mode, business development mode, and it just turns into this feast or famine roller coaster, which is not fun and not what you signed up for, presumably.
Yeah.
So that's just like, I think we can't talk about this topic without just kind of naming that reality.
Yeah. For
Um,
sure.
and so, yes, want to make 100% work by yourself. There are many people who get one of the capacity to do that. They like that. They want that. More power to them. Like, don't join my firm. Don't.
Yeah.
And if anybody out there, and the truth, this is relevant for potential clients too, because if you want to know what kind of people like I'm going to be potentially introducing you to from my team, then look at my join the team page on the Wolf's Edge Integrators website, so you can see. And this is to get to your other question of like, how do you ensure that people want what you do? Is like, I lay everything out. Like, we have a very in-depth join the team page with a lot of information. Like, we like open it all up. I was about to use a phrase that people use, but it is like, open it all up. Like, let everybody see exactly how it works. How much do you make? What's involved? Who are you looking for? And and just say, like, only apply if like you're really excited. Like, you paint this picture, you're really excited about that picture. Please apply. If you're not,
Hmm.
don't apply. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and so we set that up of FAQs, get it, just like all the details, like every detail we get into on that. Um, and the most important point I would just say in closing on this question is that we make it really clear that, and we repeat many times throughout that part of the website, is that you know we're looking for people who want to be part of a team, want
Yeah.
to build something big together, like, who actively want that. If you just want a lead hub and a place to get leads and clients, like, you're going to feel like you're giving up too much by joining us, right? Because, like, we want to be part of a team that wants to, of people who want to be part of a team of people,
Yeah.
and not only be part of a team of people, like, because, yeah, okay, you could have peer advisory groups and kind of networking groups and stuff, but like, we want to like build something big together that makes an impact on the world. That's the kind of people we want, is people who want that, who actively want that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're in the exact same boat. So I think that we found people who really like to be able to, like, you know, go into their Slack channel and be able to ask questions about, like, hey, my client just said this. Do you have any recommendations for this? Even just having that kind of, not, that sense of like we're all kind of working on the client together to hopefully make it a better situation. So I think people are craving that too, like coming out of COVID and actually having like a workplace environment and not just being stuck at home. I mean, even though we have remote workers and whatnot, but like just having that sense of like, I'm not alone. There is a team. Like I do have somebody who's got my back. If I'm out on vacation, like somebody can cover my clients for, the week that I'm gone or the 2 weeks that I'm gone or something like that. So, there's a lot of things that the team can do and really, yeah, I like having that for sure. And so, yeah, if it's not for you, it's not for you. And you do all of that in the hiring process. Well, we're coming up on our time here. It's been really great chatting with you, Ben. I think that we're really aligned in a lot of how we think about all of this fractional leadership and whatnot. And I can see a lot. This helps me get a lot of clarity, even in just advising our clients of like when they might need a role like this. So I thank you for sharing today. Before we go, I want to make sure to point people to your website, which is wolfsedgeintegrators.com. So, and we'll also link that in the show notes for anybody. We'll put your book down there as well. Last question I have for you is what's the best piece of financial advice you've ever gotten?
Well, it's the best piece of financial advice I've ever gotten, but it's the best one that I would give because just once I started doing it, it feels totally different, which is to like live by like a 12-month rolling future budget.
Hmm.
Like just like live with that. Like is like it's the difference between like guessing and wondering and look at your bank balance or like looking just at the past is I feel like I'm like flying blind. I'm making decisions blind.
Mm.
Like, by like really like, obviously work with a CFO firm like yours, or somebody you have on staff if you can, whatever it is. But like it is so valuable to like live with a 12-month rolling future budget. So like, oh, this expense, like this investment, we're gonna put in marketing is probably gonna happen here, and this hire is gonna happen there, and like, and well, here's probably some, a bunch of client contracts are ending here, so we're gonna have attrition that we could, and just like bake all of that into the next 12 months, and anything you're thinking of doing or hiring or anything, just like you're just always going back to it, always constantly going back to it. Like starting to do that now the last few months, and it's like a different world. I think I feel like I can like feel confidence about my decisions,
Mm.
or me and the leadership team's decisions. We could feel confidence about. Um, it's just a total game changer, not flying blind.
Hmm. Well, I love that as a CFO. I love hearing that. And I promise audience, I did not pay Ben to say that. So,
I'm
but,
totally
well,
sincere. I'm speaking from the heart.
yes, I love it. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you being on the Financial Clarity podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Financial Clarity podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes to learn more about today's episode and click subscribe on your favorite podcast app.